Guys, this is Pineapple, and today we are here to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 229. Now, of course, how I like to do this is I'm just going to be talking. I'm going to cut up me talking about the chapter live as I'm reading it, not for the first time, but I'm going to be reading it, going through my notes, going through a bunch of things, and I'm going to cut it up so that it's nice and pleasant. But you can pretty much just throw this on, throw it in a tab in the background or something. I'm not going to do a bunch of like insane editing or anything. This is more of like a podcast style, so just have this in the background while you're gaming or whatever you're trying to do, whatever you're doing today, while I talk about my hero, because that's what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm here to do. So I hope you're here to listen. But first, let's get the intro out of the way. Hit it. So My Hero Academia chapter 229. We thought we were going to just be in the middle of some insane Dabi Todoroki sort of theory stuff right now, but we end up being in the middle of some Twice stuff, and I really feel like some people were a little upset that it wasn't the Todoroki stuff, but I see a lot of the opposite in the fandom. I see a lot of the people really happy that we're not doing the Dabi stuff right now, and that's completely understandable. I'm really happy that we're seeing the Twice stuff. The Twice stuff actually has been really interesting as far as from what we've read so far, and obviously there's more Toga on screen, so I'm sure that's going to make everybody happy because everyone seems to be massive fans of Toga starting from this arc, which is great. So we start this arc with the many different clones of Twice that aren't actually clones of Twice, grabbing him, taking his mask off, and basically throwing him around, throwing him on the ground. Now, Twice, and I'm just going to call him Twice because I'm not going to call him Jim Bubblebeam Jim, whatever, Bubaigawara. That's a tongue twister for me. I'm not doing that every time, so I'm just going to call him Twice or Jin. But yeah, Twice is an interesting guy because Twice has been around since season 3. We initially meet him as part of the Vanguard action squad that are members that joined the League of Villains after the fall of Stain at the end of season 2. And he pretty much joins the story with Toga, Dabi, Giran, and them. And when we meet him in the Forest Training arc, we get a very brief sort of understanding of what his quirk does. He says, I copy people if I have their exact measurements. My clones can use their quirks, and I never copy myself. That's a sacred rule that I have. And that was a little mysterious. We kind of don't know what that's all about until later on in the series. We pretty much see the backstory of what happened to Jin. And that's also something that we saw at the very end of My Hero Academia season 3, where we end up seeing that he pretty much cloned himself a bunch at some point. The clones all started getting rowdy. There was a war and a fight between all of them until only he was left. And he wasn't entirely sure if he was an original or he was a clone. So he was just living in fear that he would disappear if he got hurt too badly, or, that his personality started kind of splitting also as a result of that. A lot of weird things started happening. But one of the things that I really appreciate about Twice, that I'm sure everyone will notice and everyone appreciates about Twice, is that Twice is very much My Hero Academia's version of Deadpool. Now, whether that's just because the outfit looks this very, very similar, the eyes are very animated and big, and they very much have that same kind of look to them. Literally, if you just recolor Twice's outfit and give him 2 swords, he pretty much has and give him a utility belt or something, he pretty much has Deadpool's outfit. So he looks very much like Deadpool, but apart from just the way that he looks, there's a thing that the both of them share, which is that they have this split personality thing going on. If you've ever read a Deadpool comic, you know that there are text boxes when he speaks, right? Like he's speaking, oh, this is what's going on. But there's also like a secondary or even like a tertiary, a third text box sometimes that represents 2 different split personalities that Deadpool has inside of himself that sometimes come to the forefront, usually often, come to the forefront and have sort of conversations within the narrative and break the fourth wall and then kind of like, influence Deadpool's thoughts and stuff like that. And that's something that we see in My Hero Academia too. We see distinct text boxes or distinct text represented in basically black attached text boxes to Twice's already white kind of, weird text boxes. We see an inside voice inside of Twice's head telling him to do stuff, making him scared of all sorts of things. And that's just another way to kind of draw this comparison between Twice and Deadpool that I think is really awesome. And again, it's another example of how Horikoshi is a big fan of Marvel Comics. We recently did a bunch of videos on, Marvel Hero Academia is what I call call it. Check those videos out if you haven't seen them. More of those videos are coming while I'm gone for Anime Expo. I'm doing all of my what if videos and stuff like that for anyone that's been wondering. The what if Luffy, fantasy what if academia. But yeah, so in this chapter we end up seeing, and there was a lot of goofy stuff online. People being like, I'm not even really going to get into it because I think people just need to learn to, when you see some images from a chapter, just wait, just wait a little bit. And I know I'm the guy who's always on here. I do whole videos talking about spoilers and stuff, but before we jump to like conclusions about stuff that's going to end up being like, it's like drama, really. You know what I mean? Like, it's like incendiary. Before we start drawing opinions on certain stuff and claiming certain things are certain other things, let's just wait. Wait until there's context and you have a whole page and stuff like that. Just relax. Because what happens in this chapter is the clones basically pin Toga down, and this is where you can see there was some confusion already. They pin Toga down and they start trying to snap Toga's neck right in front of Twice. Now, I've been telling you, this arc of My Hero Academia has gotten pretty dark, and I am 1000% here for it. Because let me tell you, when I made that video explaining, before this arc even began, when I made that video saying, hey, oh man, this A League of Villains arc would sure be amazing. I hope we stick with the villains a few more chapters. Oh, it would be great, Horikoshi, please. I didn't expect them to basically be reenacting the raid and flooding into a town and killing all these folks. But I also didn't expect for the series to get this dark. We've seen blood splatters along the walls, people getting murdered, waves of just death and gore. And now we're seeing like this weird picturesque moment of all of these Twice clones coming together and like carefully lifting Toga up, right, by different parts of her body, around her back, her hair, and in front of Twice, trying to get him to stare at it as they twist and try to pop her head off. Now, you may be wondering, why are they doing this, right? What's the rationale between trying to kill Toga in front of Twice? And what it is they're trying to pretty much turn Twice into a member of the Quirk Liberation Army, right? And when they understand, and this is really, it gets really sick and twisted. They understand that Twice has a really fractured and destroyed mindset. And they understand to a certain degree how dangerous his quirk is. And that's something that we're definitely going to get into explaining, because we get a lot more backstory into who Twice is as a person, how he got into a situation and whatnot. They very much understand that Twice is a very useful asset that they could use if they're able to make use of his mental instability to kind of turn him to their side. At the end of last chapter, Chikazoku, I believe is his name, the feel-good ink company guy, tells Twice that he basically wants to recruit him, and I mean, how else do you think that's going to happen? They're going to break his mind to basically make him one of them, or make him at least a usable tool that they can use to basically have access to his quirk to do whatever they want with it, right? So the beginning of that is getting rid of the only thing that he cares about, even by Twice's own admission. The main thing that he loves, that he cares about in the League of Villains, is Toga. And all of the different members of the League of Villains are members of Twice's family, like he says, but Toga is someone that's very special, that's very close, that covered him up when he was splitting in the Chisaki arc. It's pretty much that he has a crush on her, it's very different. So getting rid of Toga and just killing her right in front of him and forcing him to watch, and it's also forcing him to watch himself kill Toga, and get rid of that only thing that he feels tethers him to the League of Villains, really, is sort of their way of trying to break his mind and bring him over to their side. And it's really disgusting. It's really crazy. But this is where we start getting flashes back to what would initially cause this mental instability with Twice, right? Like, initially we saw that, yeah, there was this big battle between himself and all the different clones of himself. But like, where did that start off, right? That's always been kind of the grand question. Like, how do we get to the point where you're sitting in a room with 1,000 versions of yourselves or whatever, and they're all murdering each other, right? And we learned that Twice was just a normal guy, He was in a motorcycle accident where he hit somebody that apparently jumped in the way of it, and his lawyer really didn't fight for him to get the justice that he deserved, so he ended up having to take that charge, and because of that, he got in trouble at work, and then from getting in trouble at work, he got fired, and that was related to the motorcycle because the person that got hit by the motorcycle was known by his bosses. Pretty much what you'll find is his life and where he's gotten to is he's a guy that's really down on his luck. He did everything he could to live on the up and up. He was just a guy that was working at a company. He was trying to be a good dude. You know what I mean? Like, he's just doing his job. But what ends up happening is he's just, because of a series of unfortunate events, he really just goes down the wrong path. And ends up being homeless and ends up completely alone in the world. He lost his parents at a young age. He has nothing. And all that he's left with, right? Imagine, put yourself in Twice's shoes. You have nothing. Everything in the world has been taken away from you just from this one little accident that wasn't even your fault, that you had to take the blame for, right? Everything in the world is taken away from you. And all you have is this quirk that lets you copy people. And you don't trust anybody in the world besides yourself. So he copied himself. He copied himself, and when he was homeless, he sat down with himself and they had conversations, and they would give each other advice and all sorts of stuff like that. And soon Twice realized that the only person that he could trust was himself, but that was fine because he could just make more, you know, he can just copy himself and clone himself. And as all of these different Twice clones kind of got more like laid back and relaxed, it's very much like what you see with the Meeseeks box in Rick and Morty. Too much of anything is a bad thing, pretty much. And having too many of one person that are all pretty much enabling each other to do whatever they want and saying, like, they're all on the same side. Like, you're not going to disagree with yourself. When one of yourself says, hey, I have an idea to go rob a bank or form a gang or do this and that, the other ones, if you were, they're thinking the same thing, you know what I mean? Like, you're all going to have the same mindset. So pretty much what ends up happening is that Twice ends up forming this giant, large gang of himself, and he ends up like coming at odds with them. I think there's some sort of grand dispute between himself and the clones, and that's where we end up seeing that this fight begins. They start killing each other, and I feel like all it took was one clone killing another for them to realize, whoa, wait a minute, it's that easy? It's that easy to get rid of one of us? So a few of those Twices in the room are thinking, bam, I can get rid of some of these guys right now by just stabbing them. You know what the rest of those Twices are thinking? Oh no. Like, if regardless of if they remember they're a clone or not, if they remember that they're a clone, they're thinking, oh no, now I need to start stabbing and fighting and doing whatever I can to defend myself because everyone around me is going to attack me to try to kill me. And they're all attacking each other to try to kill each other. So now I have to defend myself by killing all the Twices. So it really just becomes a bloodbath between all of these different Twices attacking and murdering each other until the original is the only one left. And the thing is, like, he thinks that the reason that Twice thinks that he might be a clone is because he hasn't allowed himself to get injured. He explains to Giran when they meet that if his arm was broken or his leg was broken or like a bone, pretty much, a bone break is what it takes for one of his clones to get turned to mush. So he hasn't allowed himself from that point, from the beginning of his mental instability, he hasn't allowed himself to have a bone broken. Terrified that if it does happen, he might disappear. He might just cease to exist. And that's also why he doesn't split himself anymore, because he can't even take having his face without the mask on, you know what I mean? When he's operating. So imagine having to see himself, you know, when he doesn't even have control of whether or not the other him wears the mask. And I would imagine a bunch of mentally unstable Twice clones would probably be a bad thing. But he explains pretty much like, you know, this is why I think that I'm a clone. And what we end up seeing in this chapter, once we're back to the actual present, is the different Chikazoku clones of Twice grab Twice and tie him down, pretty much. They hold him down as he's supposed to be watching Toga get her neck snapped, and they break both of his arms. And that's where, and you see the video title, and that's where we're gonna say Twice awakens his quirk. Because Twice realizes here, oh, wait a minute, I'm not a clone? Oh, so I can just do whatever I want. There's now no restriction on what Twice can do with his quirk. And Giran told Twice, look, you have an extremely powerful quirk. You understand the potential behind such, like, it's a very dangerous quirk, and they're kind of lucky that it was in the hands of a mentally unstable guy who refused to use it to its full potential. And that's a thing that we see a lot in comics too. Like, you'll give a character an amazing power that they refuse to or can't use to its full potential because they don't understand it, or there's some sort of mental block. Like, kind of like, look at Franklin Richards, right? Franklin Richards is a little baby in Marvel Comics that is completely able to reality warp and do all sorts of things, but he doesn't understand how to do that until the future version of him comes back and explains all that. But I guess that's a whole different topic. But Twice here realizes, oh, okay, there's nothing keeping me from using my quirk to my 100% output to the full degree that I could use it. There's nothing keeping me from doing that now. So this quirk that Twice was using as just like a cute, hey, I can copy you and send you in to use your quirk here and there. You know what I mean? Like, they struggled during the Chisaki arc. This quirk that Twice has been using like very carefully is now awakened into like a whole, to what it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? This is now, he's going to be using this quirk how it's supposed to be used. And what he ends up doing here is he ends up forming a wave, an entire wave. Now, we've seen Twice, like, you know, make a clone for somebody, but like, he just makes one with his two hands in front of him and they kind of appear, right? That's what, especially what we see in this chapter. A sort of gel appears from, stemming from Twice's hands, or his body, and he kind of shapes it or scans his hands upward into a person. But in this, we see him spawn, let me count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe 14 Twice clones, and it's trouble, because the thing that we're not even thinking of, right? It's like a fire. And what I really like, and I think it's going to be very important to note, and Horikoshi likes doing fun stuff like this, it seems like there's a fire. It's like a blaze, right? The way that it's drawn is that Twice, from him stems like a giant inferno that all of these Twice clones come out of. It's supposed to be like a wet liquidy gel. We already know, like, it's a white gel that the Twice clones are made of. But if you look at how it's drawn and how the peaks and the kind of like edges of the gel look, it's supposed to kind of look like a fire. And it's awesome that it's a spreading fire of Twice clones, because if all of these clones can use their quirk, then that means all of these guys can make the same amount of Twice clones. So you see how it's like a small little ember turning into a big raging inferno, because if all of them start using their clones, and then all of those Twice clones start using their clones, you're just gonna have a massive, really instantly, it's just a multiplying army of Twice clones that I'm sure is probably gonna be how they're... It would be amazing if they end up defeating all of the quirk users in the town, like the 90% of the quirk users in the town, by using Twice clones, and then they're just ready for when Gigantomachia makes it there, and the end battle of this arc actually ends up being the League of Villains, or whoever's left, versus Gigantomachia, to end up getting that sort of recognition that Shigaraki was looking for, and that respect that Shigaraki was looking for from Gigantomachia in the first place. That would be really interesting, and that would also be a huge twist, because I think we're all thinking that Reed Destro is going to be the big final boss here, right? And in this chapter, we actually learn another little spark of information. We keep getting a little info about this guy. Apparently, he gives Chikazoku nanomachines or micro machines or something to help him use his quirk better. And we also saw something like this with Curious. She had a sort of like wristband that completely changed shape and became something else. And it reminded me of Tony Stark stuff in Endgame and Infinity War, where the nanomachines form different weapons and stuff like that. It's really weird. And now we're hearing that there's also nanomachines that apparently Reed Destro gave to Chikazoku that enhance his quirk, or it makes him more powerful or something like that. It gives him a better control over his quirk and what he can do. So it's making me wonder if Reed Destro's quirk is going to be based around different nanomachines that he uses somehow. And if that's the case, that makes him extremely dangerous, because that's an extremely potentially versatile quirk. And that's also something that's going to be hard to detect. And a character using nanomachines, now that I'm really thinking about it on the spot here, a character using nanomachines is the perfect counter for a character that, for Shigaraki, a character that decays things, right? Like it's pretty much like how we saw Snatch, which was that Sans quirk user at the end of the Chisaki arc. He was supposed to counter Shigaraki by making it so that Shigaraki couldn't decay all of the little particles of sand. If you do the same thing with nanomachines and they're also able to turn into things like weapons, it would be really cool. Like, it's pretty much sounds like Gaara's sand for Reed Destro made of nanomachines. So it's like Tony Stark nanites fused with Gaara or something. That would be really awesome. And it would kind of also show us like how he just destroyed that guy when in his introductory chapter. He puts the guy in the headlock and just kind of destroys his neck, and there's like a weird sort of smoke or something on him, and there's weird sort of the symbols that appear on his face also. And if there's nanomachines in his body that are kind of enhancing him or covering certain things up or just changing him a certain way, that would also make sense and kind of fit in line with what we've seen, giving him enhanced strength, covering up certain parts of his body. Maybe even the birthmark is part of the birthmark is probably a brand that he gives them or something that he does that has something to do with his quirk. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Redestro's quirk is all about and, you know, what's going on with all that. It's going to be interesting to see what Twice is going to do with all of these clones. And I think next week we are going to see all the Twice clones taking on these other Twice clones and destroying them. And but I don't know how this ends up being. Like, how do you defeat Chikazoku? Because he's all the way in the tower. Like, is Twice gonna rush the tower with all of these clones to knock out that quirk user? And then is that when we're gonna see some of maybe Redestro wiping out the Twice clones of his nanomachines? Like, it's very interesting to see what's gonna happen, because at any time we could also dive back to the Dabi Todoroki theory stuff going on, and the Dabi literally fighting a giant ice dragon. Or we could cut over to Compress and having him have a fight and figuring out like some of his backstory. So tons of options that we have here. I feel like this arc is incredibly interesting. I mean, come on, you got to be loving this. The villains are getting in their bag. They're all, this is awesome. I'm very grateful for this arc. I want to see more of this stuff. But yeah, thank you for being here while I rambled. Once again, these videos are very, not a lot of editing. You know, I just talk about the chapter, I give my opinion, and you know, you pretty much just get to hear me ramble and fangasm about the chapter for 20 minutes or however long it is. But I appreciate you guys coming here. You know, check out my other videos. There's tons of other content. And if you want to see something that's more edited with stuff moving around and stuff like that, there's tons of other content on the channel that I implore you to check out. You can follow me on Twitter. Just do all this stuff. Please hit the bell icon, by the way, because YouTube just doesn't show you my videos, and I think it's a travesty. Get the notification so you see my videos so you don't miss out on anything, or just at least keep coming back and make sure you check my stuff out. So I love you guys. I can't wait to talk about, I wish they would have put Twice in One's Justice, because I would love to play some Twice in One's Justice right now and kind of test out his quirk and do all sorts of different stuff. But I mean, years of playing Naruto games with the Shadow Clones, I guess we already know that's like. But yeah, I'll see you guys later. This is Pineapple. Peace.